on Social Security. I like to say hello to the authorities here present and participants on this panel and the public in general who's accompanying us. And just to give you a warm hello of welcome to this second day of activities for the Regional Forum of Pensions organized by this Congress, I hand over the mic to our interim General Secretary, Maestro Álvaro Velarca Hernández, for him to help us and to provide and to address a few words for the participation of today. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you. Good day. And before I start with this second day of work, I'd like to send a nice hello to all people who have actually accessed and joined into this conference, and I would like to express my personal gratitude and in the name of all those participating in this forum and under the 84 institutions or 86 countries that are part of this conference. And mainly on behalf of Mr. Solo Dorigo, the President, thanks for being with us also and following us on these forums. We shall start our second last day of the Regional Forum for Pension Funds, and there will be two panels. In the first one, which is about to start, we will have the participation of the different international organizations who thank you very much. We thank you for your interest and your enthusiastic participation. The objective analyzing the different guidelines for this, of this application of these pension funds in a short and long-term period. We shall have participation of different members and where the people will provide different ways of focusing on this. And together with what we developed yesterday, we need to generate a dialogue on the challenges of the pension systems in our continent. And again, thank you for those who are here with us. Be very welcome to this second day of the forum. And with no further ado, I pass it on to dear Monica. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. We thank you for your welcome words. And the proposal for regional forum of pension funds, the vision of the international organizations, is thanks to the recognition of the role that these play at global level. And as we know, under the current times in international relationships, we are aware of the existence of an anti-multilateral wave. So it's an obligation to remember more the importance of the role of the international organizations in the peaceful role and proposal role that they've always had to offer to the countries of the world. Along these lines, the mandate of some international organizations, such as the ones with us here today, has been clear: to promote protection and human rights and the right to social security, and of course also the right to have a worthy pension for the last stage of life for any person, any human being. And the international organizations that we have got with us here today will have lots of contributions to share with the authorities of the membership that is part of all these organizations and all the interested groups and experts in this so important topic, not only for Latin America, but also in the world. And today we've got 4 representatives from international organizations, such as the Organization of American Social Security Association, the International Association for Social Security, Sub-Regional Association of Mexico, CEPAL, and obviously the Inter-American Conference on Social Security. So we will then start with this panel. And the public joining us, we remind you that we can leave your questions or pass on your questions along as the panel is taking place, and I shall get them so I can put them forward at the end of the presentations. I will now read the first, well, the participation from the Ibero-American Social Security Organization, Maria Jose. Sorry, Maria Jose Matos, Avero Matos, sorry. She is consultant in Social Security in the Ibero-American Social Security Organization. She got the degree on law from the University of Madrid, and she has actually worked as consultant in the handling of standards for Social Security and director of the cabinet of the Secretary of State of Social Security, and also director of the cabinet of the State's Secretary of Social Security, all of this in institutions in Spain. So we welcome Maria Jose, and we shall be very paying close attention to the contribution that you got. The ROES. Good afternoon. Thank you very much. First of all, I wish to pass on regards on behalf of Dr. Adriana Riano, because she was summoned to another meeting and she was not able to be here to handle topics on international cooperation and linked to the pandemic for COVID-19. And that's why she's not been able to participate here in this panel, and it's a pity. I also thank you for the opportunity to participate in this activity, and first of all, of course, tell you that, of course, what the importance is that we feel the different international organizations have got in this area. I will make a succinct reflection as to what the problems are right now, which we might find for social security systems. And can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. Sorry. I thought I was being told you couldn't hear me. Sorry. First of all, I will abide by the time that I should not go past 10-15 minutes. Is that correct? So I've got to summarize a bit what my presentation will be. Right now, no one lets go of the importance of the social security systems and social protection systems in a large scope, much more so that it is becoming evident the difficulties that different sectors of the population have got to face, the situation of needs that are being produced when the situation is taking place. And so sometimes systems of social protections has faced different risks and different discussions, basically based on what would be having some type of income. Obviously, what we need to have is a social security program. The problem is that the society is undergoing this situation, and the circumstances are changing as well, and the circumstances we face are different, and they are getting larger, and for social security, that's people under those services suffered this more. Also, within the different studies and discussions that might come up in the different systems, we understand that the participation and the different roles of the international organizations is very important, because they are in a privileged position by knowing in a global manner and horizontal manner what the situation in different countries are, the different experiences that are taking place over there. And why? Because honestly, the only thing that they can solve is that there should be access to social security, but it is not granted to all citizens, but it is a right that they all have and we all have, to have worthy pensions and pensions that are sufficient, and that several states shall have to look for the best ways and best guidelines to get the financing for these pensions. Hence, the role of the international organizations as observers, impartial ones, on a daily basis can actually apply their experience via studies, trying to see that this coverage of the pension should be guaranteed all over the world and every country with the different roles. For this, we can't forget that the country for Social Security is a basic thing for protection. If we later have got a greater protection for other areas, for the workers, who, for the first instance, we provide better coverage. We know right now we've got different trends that define social protection, the systems of different distribution, the mixed systems with different institutions, the ones that are coming up in the last few years in different countries and that now are starting to see the results. We shouldn't forget, as I said before, that the society itself is demanding different types of protection. So, for instance, the incorporation of different types of work and scarcities or lacks that we've got if the states have got no access to services, to provide services to elderly people. The social security systems, we should understand that pensions come to different ways. What the impacts of demographics are, economic crisis, and the different movements within what migration movements are. We understand also that we lack vision as regards the different mechanisms that might provide coverage and be able to provide the modality that all the countries need. We understand that this will continue and that it will be more profound. We think that at the end of the world will become smaller regardless of the programs. However, the migration movements will still take place, and we should provide protection to the workers and the families wherever they are found. And then the international organization play an important role as regards pushing forward the tools and mechanisms that are considered to be important. Just, for instance, Social Security that is pushed from different organizations, and in the next year will be an important instrument. It is something that looks after more and more population. I understand that it could be something that can still be pushed forward and coordinated and supported from a national organization, and that the coverage coincides. As regards to financing systems, we have the great difference amongst the different systems for the distribution systems. And of course, from international organizations, they take different part, they adopt different parties. Every country, every state must be sovereign to see what the best formula is that will guarantee the right to social security, and the right to pensions that they might consider that is the best and the best fit the interests of people. The reality is that for population is growing and every world is improving as they go along, and they have the problem of paying for the pensions. Let us not forget the mean of age is 65 years old, just to set a figure. There are other countries that have got 66, 67 years old for the age. But this was taken as a point of reference for the retirement. So it could be 65, 66, 67, 68. Many countries go past people that go past 80, 85 years old. So this is important. We have population is growing less, and that is a phenomenon that is taking place in many countries, in emerging countries as well. This means that we should foster policies for protection. And we shouldn't forget also that the systems, pension systems, we have to combat informal employment, which covers 65% of the population. And mainly, there is a damage on a medium and long-term basis because they have no access to the fringe benefits to which they would have had a right had they been under official type of employment. And as I said before, the workers are immersed in the different areas of unofficial employment. Finally, as a conclusion, I think I'm getting to the maximum timing of my presentation. The consideration of the international organizations as an essential instrument of great importance in current times, at the moments where the migration movements are becoming more relevant in the population of other countries, both that come. We know that there are groups that are more sensitive, and international organizations, if we understand them, can play an important role as regards their being an allies from the different instruments that are being adapted and along the lines under which we're working, so that the exchange of experiences and the objective analysis of this can have repercussions, and that can actually be enriching for everybody. And I think that is my presentation. I'm open to you for any type of clarification. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maria Jose. I don't know if you have any questions, anything you would like to voice out at this point in time. Well, if there's no questions, no comments, I would like to thank you, Maria Jose, for your participation. It was extremely important. There are some pending issues, among which we have this agreement between the Mexican institution, Social Security, has showed a lot of interest in. And well, I say we showed because I am no longer working there, and well, at least until last week, we were, you know, looking forward to these agreements. I understand what you've said about being this disruption in the periods of payment in contributions, especially those of us who have been paying contributions in Mexican Institute of Social Security and elsewhere, as is my case. So, well, of course, this issue remains on the table. Thank you very much, Maria Jose. From from this new office, but well, we'll remain in communication. Thank you very much. Now, if I may, I will pass the floor now to Raúl Ruye. I'm glad to say hi to his Noche Director for International Association Social Security. He's an expert in IT, and he's in charge of overseeing administrations towards the administrative improvement in Social Security, as well as the directives of AIS in different areas of Social Security, and putting together content for the institution. He previously worked in the Banco de Previsión Social in Uruguay as IT manager. He has an engineering degree in IT by the Uruguay National University and another IT degree from the Paris University in France. Thank you very much, Raúl. I'm sorry, Raúl, could you please turn your microphone on? We can't really hear you right now. Can you hear me now? Yes. Excellent. So first and foremost, I would like to thank you for the invitation. It is my true pleasure to partake this event put together by the Inter-American Conference on Social Security in this virtual mode. However, I think it's very important for this event to happen anyways, and on behalf of the Secretary General of Social Security in AISS, Mr. Gaetano, I would like to bring this message to the organizers and every single participant. So I will try and show you the vision of AISS and different topics, different challenges that we have in the world of Social Security and the pensions, and at the same time try to answer to the questions you posted for me. If you don't know, the International Association of Social Security, AISS, is an organization created back in 1927, stemming from the ILO, and we have branches in over 160 countries, with 328 Social Security managing organizations. We're divided in technical commissions. Nowadays, we have 12 technical commissions plus a special commission, and we're also organized based on regional structures. In that case, we have 17 regional structures covering the four main areas internationally. And in the Americas, we have three offices for the LAC region, with the C in Mexico, and for the Andean countries we have a coordination office in Argentina, and Anglophone countries are organized in one focal point, and that's pretty much the way in which we organize our activities with the different institutions around the world. Now, what type of activities we do, I'm going to touch upon this very briefly, but we carry out analysis and research activities, as well as technical reports, production of the AISS directives, which are, groups of recommendations based on best practices that we collect from member institutions, and, everything pertaining to social security systems, the analysis of different regimes. We have a publication called Perfiles de Países, Profiles of Countries. We put together international conferences, from seminars to international conferences, and more technical conferences like IT, like actuarial studies management, and that's a joint conference with other organizations on safety and health at the workplace, as well as international seminars, regional, and some webinars. We have also training courses, technical consultancy, and some sort of acknowledgement recognition program for adoption of our directives. Now, going to matter at hand, well, challenges in terms of pensions. This is not a mystery from our point of view. The three main components of these challenges have to do with the extension of coverage of workers. Obviously, informality brings about important changes when it comes to coverage, like Maria Jose just mentioned a while ago, and this brings about challenges for sustainability of the system as well for the sufficiency of the benefits to people paying contributions. These challenges are due to the impact of aging in population, as well as the reduction between the relationship of active workers and uh, and retirees is one of the most important effects when it comes to sustainability. Informality, which regretfully is an ever-growing problem, which is shifting, mutating, if you will, with a very important effect. And, well, we cannot solve informality. And this informality has to do with this new ways of working. And despite of the recommendations at the international level and best practices that we may have, when we have a new way of working, when we have a new possibility of having a job, well, informality rears its head with a very negative impact, especially in sustainability and sufficiency. And, well, we should mention gender inequalities is a problem that has a very important impact when it comes to sufficiency and coverage. Sufficiency when it comes to pensions, especially for women. Going a little bit more into detail, from the standpoint of sustainability, well, population aging is number one. This comes from something positive, which is increased life expectancy. That's something positive. But in as much as the amount of active workers who are paying contribution doesn't increase, that brings about a problem of sustainability related to life expectancy. And what we've analyzed in the past years, the more new types of jobs and precarious types of work and new types of work, this also has a negative impact in permanence of contributions, and by not having constant contributions for certain categories of workers. This, of course, has a negative impact, which is very important both for sustainability and, well, for the pensions as such. Impact of inequality, special gender inequality, brings important problems in sustainability and sufficiency. And why? And we need to voice this out clearly. Women carry out works which are not properly compensated or not even acknowledged, despite the fact that in the past years there's been important fostering of work carried out by women. Everything that has to do with economy of care and household activities, well, these are still a very important bump or a very important gap that feeds work inequalities based on gender. Now we also see that this has an impact in the fragmentation of work history. Why? Well, because systems work based on this continuity hypothesis in the work. And when there's a fragmentation in the work continuity, well, this of course has an important impact, again, both for sustainability and the amount of pensions. And finally, you take all this phenomena, and this will of course impact the system due to the reduction of the ratio between the amount of contributors and pensionees. And we also have different special retirement systems, which does not contribute to the improvement of the system. as a whole, but it rather generates further fractioning of system. Some other challenges when it comes to sustainability and sufficiency. These challenges have a direct impact on sufficiency, pensions, and retirements. The amount of contributions are directly related to well, to the amount of years working, the amount of years paying contributions, and wages at different points of working history of an individual. So obviously, when you have lack of continuity or poor payment in contributions, this will generate a low amount of retirements, and many times this could even take away the right to minimum minimum pension because people don't necessarily reach to this minimum amount of years or of this contribution periods. This hits especially hard women because when women are trying to put all the paperwork or trying to retired, they might have a problem of not being recognized as having worked continuously during a given amount of time. Now we also have impacts in health expenditures and caring of elderly people because of population aging. This has an impact in the cost of both health from a medical point of view and also care. And that's a problem, which is very serious in Europe and in countries with a lot of aging population, like Japan. And well, we're just experiencing this in America. This will be one of the biggest problems, even more so than the lack of contributions, of the inequality of contribution due to the lack of workers paying contributions and the amount of retirees. So if we have to discuss, or rather if we need to analyze options and strategies, I think that whatever has to do with health systems, care systems, this is a core subject we need to deal with. We need to bring it to the table and probably bring it together, the same sets of challenges pensions are in, because if the contributor needs to pay for health expenses from his or her pocket, that will of course reduce its available amounts of pension lump sum. And if we need to add further expenses for care services, that will of course will be detrimental for his or her pension. Now, if national systems include health and care at all age, general scale that won't affect the pensions, that will of course be a plus for retirees. Now, amongst challenges to sufficiency, very quickly, like Maria Jose mentioned in her presentation, all these challenges in terms of work recognition for migrant workers. This is still an item on the table. The situation in the Americas I would call a bit exceptional because it's not common having multilateral agreements with, the sheer size and coverage like the Ibero-American Agreement. I think that's something that we should appreciate, and I would like to help all the stakeholders behind this agreement, because if we take away the European Union from the equation, I would say that the horizon in terms of agreement and coverage of migrant workers is really precarious. So that's another problem from work recognition point of view for workers all over the world. And also when talking about sufficiency and pensions, I think that there's a balance that we need to maintain between the sufficiency, the amount of pensions, and the global sustainability of the system. And it depends on what you prioritize national level. You prioritize sustainability of the system that might play against the amount of pensions. And on the other hand, many times the amount of pensions, together with the amount of contributors, might end up hurting sufficiency. So this both sides balance, might work for or against each of these. And in the last years, we've had a positive development, with the different benefits stemming from contributions and not necessarily from contributions. And this is some sort of reflect reaction, a response to important social problems. In particular, we've seen this in Latin America. Now, the fact that we have this benefits non-related to contributions, especially for poor people, that shouldn't be an argument not to reinforce the amounts of contributional pensions for workers. So we see a bit of danger there being inequalities. And to run to extreme with social assistance and non-contributional benefits for people with lower income, and pensions, or at least decent pensions for population with larger income, and the workers and middle class to be affected by precisely in the middle. So what are the answers? Well, if there was a clear-cut answer, we wouldn't be here. I think that all this really depends on the national systems and on the economy and even the society of each country. So we're here in the situations where pensions and social security systems are so related to the system, to employment, the work market, and employment policies, that the question is, what should we do? Should we modify the system, social security system and pension system, or should we rethink the rules for the labor market as such, and the rules behind contributions, employment policies, because they are, they go hand in hand, and as of now, we don't have an answer, and that really depends on how the system works, this relationship between social security and work in countries. And again, I think that, that would be the answer. Now, things that we need to take into consideration when designing pensions to improve sufficiency and sustainability, both actuarial and economical. Something that we insist on is governance for the system. Why? Because we have this international trend having a multiplicity of pillars, going beyond that one works better than others in different countries. We think that this is part of reality. Because at the end of the day, you have non-contributional social assistance, contributional, and within the contributional models, we have this distribution system, we have the capitalization and individual savings systems. And nowadays, we have countries which are leaning towards the distribution system, or more towards capitalization system, but we could say that there's been an increase in these mixed systems that try to use or make use of the advantages between defined systems or defined contribution systems. We think that part of the reality that each country needs to make its or their own decisions. What we insist on is that there should be a system that takes into consideration governance of the pillar system, and both key players, private and state, need to provide coherence to the system to achieve good sufficiency when it comes to pensions and global sustainability. Now, together with governance and participation of different role players, I would like to strengthen the fact that we should have good communication, because well, communication should be clear for everybody. It's paramount. It's paramount when we talk about evolution of the pension systems, of social security systems, even. When the audience, when citizens understand, when they manage to understand these challenges between sufficiency, sustainability, and the importance of enrollment to the systems, the importance of paying contributions, well, that's also part of communication and the permanent relationship that we need to have with the population. Now, when this communication is not there, we see that whenever we need to make a change or a reform, it's very difficult to understand, all these implications in a few words, and this brings about conflicts and misunderstandings. So I would like to highlight the importance of communications in this matters, even if it doesn't have to do with pure economy. Now, talking about sustainability, I would like to highlight the importance of coordination between contributional regimes and non-contributional regimes. For example, especially supporting the coverage of low-income workers, independent or autonomous workers. Again, low income, which is almost impossible for them to contribute the same way an independent middle-income worker would do. So we have this question on what to do. I mean, if these workers should be covered by social assistance, or they should just remain informal. So we've had good experiences with subsidized contributional schemes that have allowed to include an amount of workers, formalize them, and in one way or the other, using state funds to support this formalization and, well, having later contributions. Something else that we need to take into consideration is being adaptable to this changing environment, taking into consideration the new types of work and increase life expectancy in such a way to make flexible, having this quote-unquote flexibilization in terms of compatibility between retirement and work. So this is easier said than done. This is a challenge. But there are some countries which are formalizing this compatibility. And what we've seen in several categories of retirees, that might be retiring full from certain activity full time, they might be in conditions of performing certain work, certain tasks part time, thus complementing their income. Something else that we need to highlight is gender considerations, because I think that the impact that gender inequality brings about is not completely acknowledged. I think this is something that we're talking about, that we're quote unquote discovering, and I think it is important for national systems to adapt to this and for them to have their own adaptability to these gender inequality problems. Now, from the standpoint of management quality, I think it is important from AISS. We generate directives of good governance, collection, communication with target audience. I think that's also part of having good management, good governance of institutions that manage social security, which also have a positive impact in sufficiency. And just to wrap up, all these alignments are aligned with the objectives of sustainable development. Number one, to fight against poverty through sufficient pensions and services to retirees and contributors. So that's something that we need to work more. Number five, gender equality. Number eight, dignifying work and economic growth. well-paid, formalized, and dignifying work. This has an impact on the social security systems. And, well, objective number 10, which is inequality reduction, which is strictly linked to the items we discussed previously. And, well, to end with my presentation, this is a reminder regarding products and activities from the AISS. We have directives, good governance, extension of coverage, collection of contributions, actuarial work, and also directives against errors, evasion, and fraud, which is an important subject we have on the table, which has an important impact in the economy and reputation of the systems. As databases, we have databases on the different social security systems, different countries, called country profiles around the world, and we have a database of good practices regarding the more operational items. We put together several events. We have International Conference on Technology Application, actuarial studies, and in the Americas we have the Regional Forum of Social Security for the Americas. And, well, within the different technical commissions, I should talk about the Commission on Pensions, which deals with this subject, also the actuarial studies, and the Commission on Investment and the Commission on Organization and Management and Innovations deal a bit more with things like governance and good management. And, well, at this point I would like to thank you, giving me the opportunity to show you the vision of the ISSA. Please go to our website, and I will remain here in case you have any questions.
Thanks very much, Raul, and thanks very much also for your presentation. It has got several elements that I would like to rescue and remark about. And again, it's a huge challenge we've got here for the whole of the continent, especially for the Mexican case, for the informal market or employment, even larger than the formal market. 56% of the working force is still informal, and 44%, the rest of it, as you mentioned, there's a high fragmentation. Not only does one quote for IMSS, but there are other different pension systems, ISTE, and in other federal entities of the Mexican Republic, there are different pension systems, and in other, for instance, different orders of government, and we have other pension systems there. So this all comes together onto a large migration and large difference of workers between what is formal and informal in one or the other system, and this brings about a density of quotations which is very low and is a risk for the pensions, as you say, and it affects all the countries of this region, and then it is important to look after. Thanks very much for all your remarks and comments, Raul. There are, I think, a couple of questions that are being sent to us now. The the second question, what does one do in Latin America to have access to a worthy pension as regards when the growth and economy of the different countries are not equal? And shall I read the question, so is that right? And later you can give us your answer. Yes, all right. They also tell us, what is happening in this forum? What is the difference between right to Social Security and the different access to the Social Security? I think there's one would be a benefit and one would not be a right. What would the panel speakers think about it? And what public policies are recommended to improve the economy of looking after people, because when you have to look after people, like your children, your elderly people, they don't quote anymore. So what could you do? What could Dr. Ruya do between the social system and the tax system of redistribution of richness or wealth? If the countries cannot generate employment, the contribution pensions fall down. And what do we do if we know that the countries depend on a global economy for generating employment without considering informal employment? Can you perhaps answer little by little, please? Quite a few questions. I'll try and do something quick right here. If we start with the macro aspects, I think we should consider that every country has got their own political, economic system and social security system, and they have to make it work far beyond than what might work in one country or not another country. Clearly, there isn't just a given type. There is no magic recipe, right? And on the other hand, what I think is interesting to check on Latin America for the relationships for the taxing system or contribution system and social security would be that in as much as the taxing system or contribution system might be more aligned with the income of the people and not so much with the indirect taxes that allows, on one hand, to increase the tax space for political policies, and it has a less impact on the people. That would then be a type of strategy. And obviously, a taxation system based on the income is much more complex and difficult to be implemented than a tax system based on indirect income. So it's easy to say so, but to implement it is a different thing. But then there's a clue there, and I think that it's something that is worth, yes, thinking about, because it has a good positive consequences in some countries of the region. As regards the formalization of care that is given to the family, or negative aspect of this when they have to look after people and it's not done in a formal way. Yes, there's something to be done indeed. There's a type of action, clearly one to be taken. And there are two types of doing this. We have to check what type of regime organization will apply that is more compatible with the social system of the country. On one hand, we've got making these activities or welfare or looking after activity, caretakers activities being formalized, and the recommendations that are formalized that job is a formal job and recognized. Hence, the people who do this can actually contribute and then can have a right to have social security and benefits and a retirement. And the other one, as regards the caretaking services, let's say that there we've got two lines. One, the social security system would grant fringe benefits that are economic to people who need caretaking services. That would go along, or in some countries it goes along with the pensions and retirements as economic benefit that is additional, not only for retired people and pensioners, but also to people who, for whatever reasons of health perhaps, or discapacities, need care. So there's some type of economic support that in the end can turn into the fact that if you pay an external caretaker, or you pay someone who is a member of the family but is actually carrying that activity out, to summarize, to make this formal and this system of caretaking services, we feel it's very important, and there are important background. There is background information on this. It's a type of system that is a bit atypical, and we will have to check onto what is the best way that works for each country. There are two ideas there to be distinguished. One is to make it formal, and the other one would be financing, right? And it shouldn't be that the lack of financing stops the formalization or making it formal. The other question you made was regarding the vision more on the side of benefits or benefits. I think, again, it's related to how you propose the social security and the rights in every country. Many countries, for instance, it is in the constitution. In other countries, not necessarily. But however, in any case, well, when we're practical, far beyond what is proposed as rights or benefits, what has an impact in the population is that indeed it should be recognized during their working activity and active life that the person should be covered, and that the social security system should promote the formalization of the different types of workers, and that they should protect them during their active life, and then when the time of retirement comes, that the system, both from the point of view of economy and the point of view of rendering of services, might be under a situation of answering back to the needs of the population. And then perhaps that's the bias that we've got at AISS. We need to place emphasis on one implementation and the capacity of the institutions to have the provision of services, which obviously runs parallel to the laws, right? I mean, if there are no laws, there's nothing. But the laws themselves are not enough. Why? Because the systems need to work, and because they need to come out correctly onto the public. So we feel that the vision of rights under which we believe, we do think it is important, but later there must be some type of focus so that later the population should have the benefits that they should have. And along the life of people, there should be formalization and recognition of the activities. If I missed out on anything, I've got time, tell me. If not, that is it. Thank you. Thank you, Raul. Yes, there are other questions, but unfortunately, we haven't got too much time, so we shall place them. We'll make them available to you so that you can help us get the answers to those that have actually made the questions. Thanks very much. Thank you. Next, I'd like to present Pablo Yáñez Rizo. He's research coordinator in the section of pensions in Mexico for Latin America and the Caribbean, the CEPAL, CEPAL. He handles different matters for the National Television University between 1998 and 2002. Uninterruptedly, he has had these responsibilities. And from February 2008 to August, he was General Director for the evaluation of activities in Mexico City. He graduated from the University of Social Policies, and up to October 2014, the development for Mexico, Haiti, Peru, and other countries from CEPAL. And thank you. Welcome. It is on. All right, it's on now. Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation made by the CIS to exchange ideas, reflections regarding the different pension regimes and how to look forward onto the future, and somehow highlight the importance of this topic, and especially also the momentum we are undergoing. The pension dimension of our welfare system is no sound, no sound. From a perspective that is, sorry, the audio is not coming through. What society is. If we adopt the pensions regime, it will indicate a lot as regards the working regime, labor or salary, as regards the quality of employment, different ways of stratification on social activities. And so behind the discussion on the pension systems, we're not only discussing the dimension of pensions or people who are being retired or under retirement. No audio. And this carries in-depth implications. Pablo, sorry to interrupt you, but we don't get you because the audio is not on all the time. So let us, we just wanted you to know that it's not coming through along. But I don't know if it's here or there. I've got bandwidth that is quite good. I do see we also have got the technician here, but let us continue. And sorry for the interruption, and sorry, the participants, and continue. Does it make sense? I mean, if I'm not being heard, it doesn't make sense. We do hear, but there are seconds when we lose you. But in general, it's going fine. All right. So I was saying about the importance of analyzing the welfare regime, and within it, the role that transformation of the pension regime should play. Considered as rights, there is no doubt, even the World Bank on Economic and Social Rights, the PS, explicitly speaks about the Social Security as a right, and the general observation on this right that has been developed, it also implies clearly the attributes that this right should carry. As I said, we assume that there is a process under which the current style of development shows its evident limitation. We believe that the pandemic, what has done is accelerated them and make them more visible. We already had a series of problems that were structural and that had accumulated. And along those lines, then, no audio. No audio. They're very important as the caretaker system, where the backlogs and the low level of development of the caretaking system practically in all the region is something that is very clear. I was making reference to the momentum we're undergoing, and it is to be highlighted the dimension of social conflicts and political conflicts that go along with the pension regimes. Several of the social mobilizations that have been stronger that we have seen in the last few years, both in South America and Central America, are related to the transformations and modifications that one wishes to implement in the pension regimes, or the fact that we're getting to a process of maturity of what used to be the structural reforms of 20 or 25 years ago as regards to pension activities that represented the transit onto regimes that more or less had greater intensity, where individual capitalization prevailed and where the results have been quite macro, and this is bringing about lots of discomfort and social conflicts, and it would appear that it would be good to run analysis of the period and not only analysis of the conjunction for the time being. But we need to assume also that many of the categories with which we think about Social Security were devised or thought, let us put it in clear words, for a capitalism that is less existent more and more. Somehow, the hypothesis of the full job, official one, was predominant, was masculine mainly. Full job has mainly been masculine. Thought about it, it comes from a rigid division between productive work and reproductive work. In the case of reproductive work, not paid, that falls obviously on women. And it was also considered as a logistics where the salary provided a certain function in social reproduction. There was social mobility, there was access to growing consumption, lasting goods, and where the mass of people on the salary was becoming more important, and that's why we observe different social mobilization movements. But on the other hand, we were trying to eliminate or do away with all the mechanisms of informality, being precarious, scarcity of rights. And that has not been happening. There has been a transformation. No audio. The inequality which exists today is a growing inequality related. No audio. Pablo, have you got headsets? Have you got earphones or headsets to speak on? Perhaps that might work. I should, I think, connect onto a different network. Thank you. Can you hear me here? Yes, yes. I hope that with this network we shan't have problems. Well, thank you very much. Shall I start all over or what should I do? Just go on where you stopped, right here. Then so, we need to suppose that we have a structural precarious activity. And the different ways of hiring and having jobs are disguised manners of the whole economy linked to digital services. For no one is it a new that has not been backed up or strengthened by the different systems of working activities and the exercise of working rights. So along those lines, we feel that there is no audio again. And it has an additional impact, which would be, I'm going to make it general, but I know the peculiarities are very different of each one of the countries regarding the fiscal or tax capacity of the different states. We assume that the region is a region that has got a tax activity which is weak or insufficient, or in some cases perhaps sufficient in general terms, but regressive in its composition. And in as much as there aren't enough capacities of fiscal activities or tax activities from different states, what we have called in CEPAL the new welfare regime for the 21st century. Sorry, no audio again. And the idea that there is a contribution part and non-contribution part of it, it doesn't really pay justice to reality. Let's start with the following. If we consider that the universal pensions or social pensions are not contributive, it would appear that they come out of nothing, nowhere. They are paid with general taxes that people who also receive those pensions are paying for. So the connotation might be that they don't contribute at all and they do receive something, right? Rather, they are pensions paid with general taxes. And in our countries, the taxes to consumption are pretty generalized, and they are taxes that the people who receive those pensions that are called non-contributory, indeed, they do get them. And on the other hand, as what we know, the universe of the contributive pensions, and more so with three-party systems, like for the case of Mexico, the contribution of tax contribution direct to the contributive pensions would be that it's per region. It's not a matter that they are financed by the contributions of the employer. There's an important use of public resources paid by general taxes that end up in this type of pension. So perhaps, yes, we would need to speak a bit more about pensions of direct contribution and indirect contribution pensions, but to pass the message, the social message on that according to the possibility and the location in the social in structure society, they contribute one way or another, and it might be important. So all these things must lead to the fact that we should have a very complex discussion on the modifications and transformations that are required by the pensions regimes, not only them, but also the whole group of the welfare and social protection. If one thing was that we were taught by the pandemic, or so far taught us, is that these huge stress tests for the different systems of welfare and social protection that the pandemic has represented has not been a test that has been approved satisfactorily. And there are weaknesses that are very profound, and it is time to face them. And we feel that this is a good opportunity to look forward for a long time and look after this conjunction and transform the structure. And sorry about the connection. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Pablo. And well, I apologize to our audience for not being able to listen to parts of Pablo's conversation. So I think that you have shown many of the large challenges that we have in the region to implement more solid pension regimes that would stand the test of time, especially taking into consideration the ever-changing work conditions and the ever-changing the demographic composition of countries, the ever-growing participation of women in the work market, as well as well many other contributions from other key players to the economy. All of them very interesting aspects that we need to take into consideration, and also the tax burden of taxation systems, which in Mexico present again an ever-growing challenge. We're living this experience in Mexico. I think that this year, pensions represented a burden in the Mexican system over 20 billion pesos. So, like I mentioned, this is a challenge that's ever growing, and this will get a little bit worse towards the future. We have a couple of questions. We don't have that much time, but I will read them to you, or I will send questions to you. And well, just in closing, I would like to welcome Leila Guadalupe Acedo. She's chief cabinet here in the secretary. She's a legal researcher in public policies gender perspective, and she's also working as a specialist consultant in gender analysis for different public institutions like the National Electoral Institute, National Women's Institutes in Mexico City, and in the Congress. She's been an external advisor of Coneval for public policies and gender. She's partaking in different congresses and symposium. She's a published author, and she's given training and workshops on violence as it's related to gender equality. Leila, thank you very much for being with us. Welcome. Hello, good morning. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much to Secretary General. Thank you very much for audience listening to us right now. And yeah, you can hear me, right? Can you hear me? I wouldn't like to think that we have any problems with the audio. Thank you. I would also like to thank the well, the participation. I'm extremely grateful for being able to be part of this table alongside people who are, very close to the conference and that form the basis of what we do, like the International Association of Social Security, and of course, our peers from CEPAL, Mexico, especially Dr. Yanez, who it was a little bit unsettling not being able to listen to him, his complete talk, be able to fully understand how he develops this idea. But I concur wholeheartedly with what you said, in the sense that right now it's very pertinent to restate the different categories to lead to this concept of social security, and that allow us to explain in one way or the other the logical framework where this capitalism has been developed and that has become less in the late years. And that's a new challenge that, well, that we could talk about in different table at a later time. And I would also like to comment on what you pointed out, in the sense that behind this issue of pensions, we should talk about the work consequences that this would bring about. That is to say, we shouldn't only talk about how is it that we're going to solve this point in time. I mean, the last stage of people's lives, but also how should we establish this preemptively by probably restating the system of care and so on. But without further ado, I will start with my presentation for today, and well, having this is a reference framework, like Dr. Janius talked about. It's important, knowing that today, after the health crisis and now economic crisis, that well, it's putting in evidence the frailty of social security system. It's important to reflect upon the policies that will allow to warranty the minimum basis of social security in the continent. In yesterday's tables, we presented this diagnostic framework where we pointed out how this neoliberal wave boosted liberalization of pensions in this region, well, Chile, Mexico, and other countries, thus substituting public systems for private fund managers. Workers started being considered as consumers of the financial system, thus assuming all costs for participating in the minimum and almost null information regarding their savings. We need to say that some international organizations use this scheme with the pretext of them contributing to fiscal expenses. And some people thought that, oh, it would really depend on these international organizations to be able to solve the structural problems of the pensions. So these individual systems eliminated the distributional and solidarity components of the pension systems, categories that we need to reinstate nowadays. And well, those people with low income or not being able to work will get low levels of savings that will perpetuate social inequality. And as we have pointed out in this table, and we didn't have chance to talk more about this in yesterday's tables, well, the gender gaps have broadened. So we entered into this process, like Mr. Contreras talked about yesterday, this involution, quote unquote, involution process, where a lot of countries became panicked or lethargic before the sustainability and the social security crisis due to the demographic increase we've also talked about, and the challenges that the fragmentations of the systems mean, like the case of Mexico, work informality, which is one of the main characteristics of a continent, and the low rate of coverage targeted exclusively to formal sectors. Now, I'd like to mention of this, well, because I think this has been talked about in the other tables, and I think it's important to highlight it. And we've talked a little bit about this in today's panels. We should also talk about gender, because, like I mentioned, this has been discussed. However, I think this is a problem that we really haven't dealt with, in regional discussions in Latin America. Contributors are mainly men, I think 76%. And this gap has shortened in the past years, but we still have problems shorter terms to be solved. The countries with higher gaps in contributions are Guatemala, Costa Rica, followed closely by Argentina, Mexico, and Panama. And in a lesser way, on the other extreme, we have Uruguay, which is the most egalitarian country, with around 51.5% male against 48.5% women. The aforementioned makes evident that there are several factors in this scaffolding work, especially in the life of women, which are important to take into consideration. And, well, we've put this subject on today's table. Then, after this brief diagnosis, I would like to give you the main results that the Inter-American Conference of Social Security has thought about. And, well, at least in these ideas or the new specifications that we might do of patient systems, that we need to have at least five core principles, which are universality, sufficiency, integrality, solidarity, and preservation of rights. Now, the first point, universality. Well, it's easier to understand, because that's within the mediatic and public agenda. Is worthwhile lighting the need for this to have this element in the pension system. So the first point of this element is that it should have precisely a delivery of sufficient benefits, because despite the fact that we have international agreements like the ILO mentions, where it's set forth what a minimum benefit could be, something that meets the sufficiency criteria. There are some models for systems that are not meeting this. In second place, we need to have integrating benefits delivery. That is to say, old age pension should not be delivered without taking into consideration characteristical aspects of each person. That is to say, an intersectoral view or vision that will boost precisely receiving that pension. Things like the composition of family groups, the problems that that person has faced throughout life, things like gender characteristics, like I previously mentioned. Item number 3 is that this scheme should be solidarity in nature, even if the word solidarity has received different connotations and interpretations throughout these 34 years. All people, according to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, everybody's entitled to having some sort of insurance for old age. And the way that this should work should be full on this concept. That needs to make reference to the fact that all people insured should contribute for them to receive the benefits. So we're also talking about this conceptual definition that Dr. Janus talked about. And last, the preservation of the rights of people. That, on the one hand, and like I mentioned in this table, what ILO and OIS peers are struggling for is that people should have the same rights, no matter if they're subject to insurance under certain regimes or if they go in and out the formal working market and in the relation of dependence. Now, taking into consideration these 4 points, CISS will keep working to reform pension systems, not only the principles like the ones I described a couple of moments ago, but based on social dialogue, thus broadening the number of people who listen to this, both academics and international organizations, which is one of the objectives this this work table. So one of the examples that we have been developing in the CISS and that we'll keep boosting is a recent reform, integrating reform built for Mexico. And yesterday, Dr. Berenice talked about this, which was drafted under the principles of broadened social dialogue and beyond establishing certain directives or orientations towards the reform. It was built under a new benefit scheme subjected to scrutiny of the society as a whole. It was assessed actuarially, from an actuarial standpoint, to warranty its financial feasibility in the short, medium, and long terms. And finally, it was stated in reform and limiting, but not well, limiting certain dialogues that will lead us to a complementary reform. I share with you some very brief characteristics of this reform, which you might consult in more detail on the website of this conference, a special tab showing the draft, the assessment, and the extensive reform as such, and the precise proposal for the conferences is that it should have certain characteristics like unicity. So before this fragmentation, like we mentioned in the table, the proposal states gradual unification of a system. It should also have a generation and transition, that is to say, for it to allow to choose freely those who want to keep themselves in the current system, even if it's based on individual savings, or going or trying to move to the new system with full recognition of his or her acquired rights, obviously improving the expectations of those rights. And another characteristic, one of the main ones that I would highlight, is a proposal of a multi-pillar system integrated by 4 specific pillars, which nowadays, well, we have this proposal peak has been taken again by other countries in Latin America, like Panama and Costa Rica, and all this has been fostered by the World Bank and the ILO. And I would incorporate another pillar, the first pillar, based on the universal protection, where every single citizen of a country should receive a minimum amount set under a minimum wage, something that allows to respond of this floor of social protection. In the case of Mexico, it should be financed through state resources, not only for the case of Mexico, but yes, specifically, the minimum age should be of around 65 years of age, linking this with the age of retirement of Social Security, thus avoiding disparity when it comes to retirement ages. The second pillar that has to do with the establishment of Social Security. It talks about establishing an insurance scheme based on contributions, 3-part contributions that should be gradually increasing, while at the same time warranting that can contribute for 180 months, which is equivalent to 15 years of 780 weeks contributions, very different from the over 1,000 weeks that we need nowadays. So this pillar is fundamental for what I pointed out in the beginning, because it allows to decrease this gender gaps. Well, it proposes continuity when it comes to contributions, whether it's directly or indirectly, for up to a year, in case they need to request a leave, of maternity leave, paternity leave. That is to say, in a period for almost 1 year in the calendar, that person will be able to withdraw from work life without stop being regarded as a contributor. So the generation of people's pension would not constitute a burden for active workers, and this would not turn into a tax burden for the state. Pillar number 3 is individual savings, which make reference or words acknowledge that savings and individual effort of each single person should be invested. That's why this pillar keeps active the private fund managers. Mexico, as a matter of fact, for case of this reform proposal, Mexico inaugurated this savings pillar in 1992 with contributions of up to 2% of wage of salarymen. So the proposal is to respect that percentage, and will try people to increase voluntary savings. And the 4th pillar has to do with social provision funds, which proposes to incentivize the creation and maintenance of these plans of benefits established by employers under regulation and robust and solid oversight, especially when the employers are public, thus avoiding an increase or even impact to the government's budget. Now, social security systems are a fundamental pillar to improving the well-being of people. They help face social risks, understanding basic needs related to different stages of the cycle of life of people. Now, the exclusion of these systems entails impoverishment of the society, and Latin America runs the risk of becoming in a population of poor old people. So this should not be regarded as a possible ponderation of inequality gaps, but rather as an opportunity to steer very resiliently in a way that will put the problems and the needs our population face on the table. That's why from the CISS we consider that the reforms and pensions that we expect in our region, case of Mexico, should establish as a guiding axis, guided by a strong state with a lot of presence, something that will allow for social restructuring that will establish a new social pact based on the challenges to the 21st century. Well, of course, in the midst of this global pandemic, and now more than ever, social security systems should look for the well-being in each stage of on the life of populations. And well, that's my participation, because I understand that we're running behind schedule. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Leila. Your presentation was very interesting. Everything you touched upon, everything pertaining to work market and participation of women in the pension system. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time and margin to work with for the Q&A. We will send questions to our panel members. And of course, I would like to thank you for your participation. I would like to thank you for your kind words. I think that this conversation has been very enriching for all of us involved in the discussion regarding what to do with pensions in our region. So the only thing remaining for me to do is to thank you on behalf of this Inter-American Conference on Social Security to all people attending and to all panel members. So thank you very much, and we will see you at 11:30 in this same link for our next panel. Thank you very much. Have a good day.